Okay, there we go. Thank you, everyone. I'll turn it back over to Chairperson
Thank you.
Castaway. Thank you.
Thank you. So is Julianne Apply here? No?
Yes, she is. She is present.
Okay. Julianne?
So I am here. Unfortunately, Paulette and Leslie will not be able to join us today. They are in interviews for a director position. So you have me and our supervising unit head, Ryan Burns, in legal, as well as Ben, who has been drafting the statute with us, who's our primary real estate attorney.
Okay, we're here for this meeting. Actually, we haven't discussed this till today. So we can start with the advertising. Okay, the changes to be made. Julianne, you want to go through this with us? Are there any questions regarding this, or specifically talk about the changes?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I defer to the commission members in terms of how structurally you'd like to go through this. In terms of, if you want to start, I'm going to bring up. Do you want to go through the document, like kind of just section by section?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to do that. Since
Okay,
we
sure.
haven't discussed this at all, we're doing it at this point. So there may be someone who's read has a question that's they want to bring up.
Okay. Great. So this is really moving the definition of advertising up here, and it's just making certain changes to things like we're used to reference periodicals and newspapers to just talking about communication through media outlets. But this way, when we talk about advertising anywhere in the document, we'll have kind of consistency. The whole document, you'll see it wherever we had defined terms in specific sections, we move them to the definition section. That's more of a technical change.
Hello?
Yeah, I don't know if it's me that has the echo or, okay, let's see, then maybe if,
I think it was.
Head and he shut it off.
okay, great.
Yes.
So this, though, and was formerly down in section 329A.
Okay.
So Ben did a great job on the right-hand side of giving a roadmap of when things are just getting moved around. That's where we just said like where they originally came from.
Any questions specifically for this from any of the members? No? Okay. So moving down somewhat, affiliates hasn't changed. 3, associate broker. So now we're going to brokers who are associated with another broker or with the, and we'll talk about that definition a little bit. So now we're using the word associate broker or.
So this was a request from our conversations with CTR, and I don't know if this also came from board members related to how brokers are setting themselves up now. So, you know, Chairman Klastengoy may work for a large real estate brokerage firm. So he is, although he is a broker himself, he is working almost as a salesperson, not necessarily handling the escrow accounts, not, you know, doing advertising independently on his own, tethering himself to this other broker. And so it was just making clear the liability here. Now, this is something that certainly could be done by contract. This is not something that needs to be statutorily prescribed. It is something that was a request to the department to clarify it in statute. So, you know, we put it in here and just clarified how their advertising and what their liability is further on in the document.
Julianne, I'm looking at this for a second. It says associate broker means a real estate broker who's affiliated with a responsible broker. Is that a new terminology we're adding now? Is describing whether it's now we have responsible broker, designated broker, and we're trying to simplify and make this more identify who is the broker.
Well, that's what we wanted to make very clear. So
I do like the idea of the associate broker.
yeah, so affiliated was already in the statute, but used kind of haphazardly. When we say affiliated now, we want to be very clear. It is anyone who's got any kind of employment relationship, whether it is working as an independent contractor or working as an employee. That's where affiliated is now defined. Responsible is that broker who's overseeing a salesperson. It's that broker who's overseeing a leasing agent. It is a defined term further down in the list of documents, because designated broker is different. Your designated broker is that broker who is the person who represents the company. So if you have a real estate brokerage company, they have to appoint a designated broker. Amy, do you want to jump in?
Amy? Hello?
Yep, she's figuring out mute. She's
Sorry, I'm also like surfing through the Word document I have on my computer. So just as an aside, this is actually what I am. And I think it's helpful because I don't manage anything with escrow or anything like that. So I have a bunch of broker duties that I don't do. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a salesperson essentially, but with essentially a higher education level, I guess, based on the state requirements. So I think it's helpful to have this. What I was looking for is responsible broker defined one of the definitions?
Yes, Terry.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it's item 31. So that's fine. So as long as it's, because I was also getting it confused with designated broker. So responsible broker, that's fine.
Right.
Okay, I'm all set. Thank you.
That's the same question. It goes back here. They used another terminology describing the broker besides designated broker. I assume the fact is that, again, the designated broker is the responsible broker for the company.
Two different things, two completely different things.
Right, and I think the way we read it, I think Amy, the same way as I did, was responsible broker another description of a broker. Well, now we got that.
So
It's a duty.
Terry Jo, can you scroll down to number 31? So number 31 should be on page 7 towards the
That's
bottom.
another problem. Yeah, they didn't label these pages. 31.
So that's,
Yes, I have that, responsible broker. That was another one I highlighted. Means the real estate broker responsible for the exercise of control, supervision of real estate license and terms, which is, again, so it's a description of the designated broker. Am I correct?
no, so the designated broker,
Yeah.
and sorry, Terry Jo, to make you jump around, but if you can go off to designated broker, that's on page 2.
Yeah.
That's the individual who's responsible for who's named by the business.
Okay.
And so a responsible broker can be a company. So that can be, an associate broker can work for a company, a salesperson can work for a company. The designated broker needs to be a human representative of a real estate brokerage business entity.
But hang on, a broker, even if there's a quote unquote responsible broker, the fact that someone is licensed as a broker, they are responsible. You have two people responsible, no?
Not if you choose to
No.
be an associate broker.
Okay.
So that's the thing, is that you choose to be an associate broker. And also, so let's say you choose to be, have Amy be your responsible broker and you decide to be an associate broker. And next week, you two have a terrible falling out. You just notify the department that you're no longer working with Amy and you're a regular broker again. So this is not a permanent relationship that you're establishing.
Okay.
Amy can go work wherever she wants. She can hang up her own shingles, she can do whatever. But while she's electing to have that relationship, she's notifying generally the public and the department of how certain things are going to be handled within her business.
Can I actually do have a question about the responsible broker though. So in many offices, there's like a sales manager in offices who oversees all the agents in that office. That person is not necessarily a broker. They may have their sales license, but they don't necessarily have a broker license. So I don't know how that's clarified.
I'm not clear what that person would be doing. I think in the interest of time, why don't we, Amy, if we can sidebar on that, there's a bunch of things that I'm going to plan on making a list today. There are a number of things either we're going to ask you guys to sidebar with on for this, or that I think will come up. That's going to be one where.
Okay, that's fine. I just think it needs to be realized that many sales managers in offices don't actually hold a broker's license, but they are the ones that agents come to when they have questions, and that essentially oversees the agents and the teams in those specific offices. That's all. So we probably need to figure out how that should be managed, if at all.
Okay,
And then Commissioner Breen.
Oh, I'm not a commissioner, but
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
a member of the public. The only question I would have, Julianne, I'm like Amy, I'm an associate broker. So my question is for the and I've been a responsible broker for 27 years I was. Is there a difference in the level of liability and responsibility between the responsible broker and the designated broker? I'm a little unclear on that. If a salesperson was, for some reason, had some sort of a violation and was brought before the commission, who's responsible for that salesperson? Is it the responsible or the designated or both? That's the what I'm not clear on.
Well, the responsible, so let's say that, and I'm the salesperson. I am in violation of law in some way, shape, or form. I work for a brokerage business entity. That brokerage business entity is my responsible broker, because that's who I report to. They oversee me. Now, there is something where there is a pattern practice of behavior. There is something where it's more egregious. This should have been caught by my supervisor. This is something where, we feel as an agency that it was so egregious that it's not just the salesperson that should be responsible, but also their supervising broker. And maybe also that designated broker who oversees the operation of the company. There is a universe where all three people or three entities could be involved, but it's, and I think Ben just put in, it was just chat to me, sorry, but it's a good insight.
Summarizing your point that you're making.
Yes, Ben, if you want to take that, so I don't have to rephrase your words.
Okay, and to be fair, I'm rephrasing yours. So, there's that meme of Obama giving himself a medal. So the designated broker is the relationship between the corporation and the broker, but responsible broker is a relationship between different real estate licensees. Okay, so the designated broker is just, and this is a big document, and Julianne's been doing this longer than me, so please correct me if I'm misunderstanding this. But the designated broker is just who is the broker. Responsible is not the right word, but who is the broker that's on the application for your corporate license? If a business entity wants to be a real estate broker, designated broker is the signature, the license number that's attached to that. Responsible broker is who is responsible for the behavior of teams or salespeople, or associate brokers, any real estate licensee that is that has to answer to it. So responsible broker is chain of command within different real estate licensees. Designated broker is the broker that it's just a relationship with the corporation.
Corporate entity. Thank you.
So just getting back here a little bit, it's getting confusing. So you're saying that a manager who manages people, manages teams, has to be a broker?
Yes, that's not changed. That's how it's always been. So a salesperson doesn't oversee a salesperson.
I think this has come up over the years. I'm not sure how we got around this, but because a lot of these companies have multi-offices, do not have brokers as managers.
Well, they're supposed to. So if they don't, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah, I would say the majority of offices for the large brokers, the sales manager in each office, the majority of them do not hold a broker's license. They hold a sales associate's license.
I always thought you had to have someone with a broker's license on that premises.
Well, it's not as much where you're
Assigned to
physically
that
located.
office, I guess.
That's
It's assigned to the human. So I don't, it
Right.
doesn't matter to me if, Ben and I are salespersons, we report to Amy, we're located in Connecticut. She's located, she has a Connecticut broker's license, but she lives in New Jersey. Like, whatever. She doesn't have to physically be tethered to the same premises.
Okay.
However, she has to be overseeing our work. A broker has to be overseeing everything that we're doing. And so she's liable whether or not we walk through the same door in the morning.
Right.
And so as long as the supervisory connection is there, and that's why I think, this concept of a sales manager is a different thing that we have to tackle, but we have to be very clear that salespersons have to be overseen by brokers.
This has been going on for a long time, as far as and I think we went to this once before some time ago. I forgot how we got around it, but this came up as far as salespeople, and then the administration, let's call it, had mentioned the fact is that, well, I think they're even saying the fact is that can a manager be not even affiliated with, be a broker or be a salesperson, as long as they don't give out any information or whatever. So over the years, and Joanne's been around a long time, you can see that we've seen this confusion constantly come up. Am I correct? So, all right.
That might be something where, we have to do a, public education campaign. Like that is something where, in many industries, we find over time that something's been done a certain way for a long time. Teams was one of those things. Like we wound up tackling it through legislation. It became abundantly clear that something was happening that wasn't in compliance with law. And we figured out a way to deal with it, to be able to put guardrails in there. But if unless I hear otherwise from you, I'm working under the assumption that we're not looking to do a fundamental shift of how salespersons and brokers work together. So then I think that it is then clarifying for the public that relationship between what a salesperson is and what a broker is and how that responsibility flows upward. So I'm just writing a note.
Okay, can we move on? All right, next. I guess the change was unfortunately, we have no numbers on the page, but I'm on 16, is it? We had 16. Influence residential real estate appraisers.
Oh, Terry Jo, they're on page 3. He's talking about subsection 16.
Yeah, 3, I'm sorry.
You got it right there. Yep.
Okay, so what's changed on this?
This is just a definition that was moved up to the definition section. So that's where you'll see just, it was formerly in section 20-320B.
320B, that's correct. Yeah.
So nothing, it's just, yeah, it was hard to figure out where definitions were.
Yeah,
Now they're all in one place.
okay. Any comments regarding this? Okay. I'm going to, again, as I don't have numbers here. 1, 2. So 4 is 20, non-material fact concerning real property.
Oh, so you're just going through the comments. Okay, so I will just note that all of the underlying language is new. So we were just on subsection 16, subsection 17, 18, 19 are all new as well.
Mhm.
And I think that I would really like to get input from you guys on leasing agents, definition of multi-use development, as well as negotiating. So if we can maybe go back to those. Those are.
Why did we pick 50 units for number 18?
So honestly, it seemed like a large number of units that would have someone probably at least employed on a like part-time 20-hour-a-week basis. This was not a science. This is a completely negotiable number.
It's as good of a number as any.
This is one that we did want your input on, because the idea being that someone wasn't going to just have this be like, they weren't going to get a whole ton of 50-unit buildings that they were going to be spending their time at. This was going to be somewhere where they were going to sit at a leasing office and do more regular work for this one company.
Typically over 100 units, that's where you definitely need someone on site in an office. But I agree with you, 50. We have for our multifamily, if it's 20 or something like that, anyone there. 50 is, I would think, that's really where it starts, that you need someone there 20 hours a week, 10 hours a week, whatever it is.
Questions regarding?
Hello?
Hello? Is that a comment?
Hello?
That would be Morag. Commissioner Vance, she's on the
Yes.
line at this time. Welcome.
I've been on the line for half an hour, but not been able to communicate.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Did you have a comment for the commission?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gaston?
For leasing agent, you may also want to add attempts to collect rent or security deposits, because they're collecting money there as well. I don't know how thorough you want to be, but.
I thought that was covered under renting activities.
To offer to collect rent, so just add and security deposit.
Yeah, because it's
Okay.
another like collection of money.
Well, it wouldn't be just security deposit, it would be just any revenue, actually. Security deposit or rents coming in.
We can certainly add that though. Yeah, that's
Just make it monies or something to collect monies for the use of residential.
Yeah. All right, 18, multi-unit residential development with a minimum of 50 units. We talked about that.
Yeah, does anyone else have any comments about the number, the 50-unit number?
Well, that 50 unit, you take for an example, I think probably how is it going to be interpreted? If, for example, you got 25 units and you're building 40-something units. You know, so what is it? Is it considered 60 units or?
No, so it has to be rented or available for use. So it can't be,
They have
you
to be
have it
active.
framed out. Like it can't be units in the future.
It cannot be units in view. Okay.
Like it has to be active, like
Physical.
built out, like they have the building permit, like they have the occupancy approval from the town or city. So
Well, the reason I'm saying that is a lot of these complexes are phased in.
Are you sure about that though? Because so for example, we have a client right now that they've put a deposit down on an apartment that doesn't exist yet. Like it's being built out.
and that's
Is that okay? Is that allowed?
Oh, they can do that, but in terms of when we're looking at, you're going to be a leasing agent. Like, what makes you a leasing agent? Are you tied to this property? It would be.
But meaning those 50 plus units don't actually exist yet. Is that okay? I mean, the permits have been, I guess, approved, or the building schematics have been approved by the city or whatever, but they don't physically exist yet. So that's.
So I think they'd have to, so when they're coming in and giving us the paperwork, it's, are they available for lease?
Okay.
And if they are, I guess if they're approved, and they're offering them to the general public, and entering into leases,
Then that's good enough. Okay.
it seems like they're available to lease.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's exactly what I was saying, in reference to it, or phasing in. It's a full approval, but phasing in. It counts as a number. Right, Julianne?
Yes, and I think that there's going to be, there's always going to be these ad hoc situations where we have to do a review of, are they really, available for lease yet? But we can certainly look at that as they come in. That's why the language, builds some flexibility in for the Department for Interpretation. Jill?
I have a question about number 20. So my question is, I understand that these are non-material facts, but if someone specifically asks about these items, don't they then become material facts?
This again, that's just moved up from section 329 CC. We did not change that at all. We can certainly, I'm gonna make a flag for when we get down to that section.
You see my point that it becomes a material fact the moment someone asks a question about this. If I'm a buyer, and this is that clearly it's a material fact for me, important for me, it goes into my decision making.
So in our buyer agency contract for Hartford County, which is also the Connecticut buyer agency contract, I believe there is a statement in there that says that if the buyer is concerned about, criminal activity or like that at a property, they can put that request in writing to a seller and we present that. So I would think that at that comes, because it's been requested, I would think it assumes it's now becomes a material fact if the buyer has actually requested it. So there is a provision like in the buyer agency contract, not that everybody uses the same one, but
my concern is if we're now defining this as a non-material fact, that's going to come before, whatever the buyer agency agreement says.
Let's take a look at it when we look at section 329 CC and how it factors into that section. So I've made a flag there.
Can we discuss negotiate? Because I didn't think that was very clear.
Yes, I definitely want to talk about that.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Negotiate has been rewritten, or was it just moved?
No, this is new. So negotiate has been a reference in there to when the word negotiate has been the trigger to when you have to enter into a sales agreement.
Right. And this is where I was getting confused. And that's actually why I asked the question I did via email, because I was reading this and then I was reading the agency section, and it wasn't clear to me based on these two paragraphs, essentially, what we're trying to accomplish here. I just wanted to make sure that we're still looking for people to have agency with a party when they're being shown a property. That's all.
So in here, and let me just see actually, 'cause I'm gonna go in between two different documents.
It's just, it's
We
so
want-
long and it's convoluted. That's all. I mean, it's very confusing. It's completely legalese. So
The goal was put in here, and Ben, help me find it, that we were putting in that the showing of a property. Oh yeah, it's in, oh wait, hold on. Can you go back up actually? Terry, there you go. So yeah,
What can I help?
so and that's where I was,
so just showing the property itself just does not constitute negotiate. So if you can show a property without entering into a contract with the consumer.
but that's not what the policy of the commission has been. So typically, if a person is to see a property, or if an agent is showing a property or a licensee is showing a property, they have to represent either the seller or the buyer or both. Like that's how agency has worked. And so I want to make sure that this isn't being written that where buyer agents think they can show properties without having an agency contract.
So that is how it is written currently. So now here's the thing, is that when it comes to, this is why I really wanted to focus on negotiate. There doesn't seem to be consensus in the industry as to how this should be handled. And DCP is not dying on any hill when it comes to whether or not a contract needs to be required before that first showing, or whether someone just calls you up randomly like, hey, I just drove by this property. I saw your name on the sign. Can you show it to me this afternoon? Can you go without a contract to just show that one property to this person who you've never met before?
Correct.
And then
And the
decide
answer,
afterward.
right, and the answer to that right now, based on the policy that the commission has put forward, is no. You, the agent, has to have a buyer agency contract with that buyer in order to show them that property. That property is not your listing.
As long as the commission is still, like, that is still the stance of the commission in general, then we can rewrite this. Like, we are
I mean,
here to
I don't
keep
think
talking
that,
about it.
I don't think the commission amongst themselves has really had any conversations about this. So I completely understand why agents do not want to have a buyer sign an agency contract before showing a property.
Yeah.
And it's because it's inconvenient and it's difficult and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. But it also completely lowers the bar on the level of journalism and frankly due diligence that an agent should be doing on a buyer before they let them into a property. And I don't think the commission has had any conversations amongst themselves or at a meeting about whether or not this policy should change. But I think how this is written makes it so it changes.
And it's a complicated topic.
Right, because I think commercial agency is different than residential agency.
It is, but there are points to both sides, and you raised some excellent points, and there are also counterpoints to that.
The problem is that we're having is that, you know, once you start this, okay, and you're meeting somebody at the house, you know, to that party, I mean, the public doesn't know the game of real estate. They just want to see, and they just want to buy a house. But my point is that, well, what is the agent? What actually is action? What is he? Is he a dual agent because they called on his listing? Is he going to be a designated? I mean, there's no explanation. So the next thing, this does not work out.
But Ben, the policy that I sent in that email has been the policy of the commission since 2000. And that's what's being trained in licensing class, as well as continuing education. That's what's being taught.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying this brings, there's a little difference.
It's just not clear.
That's
So,
right.
is there a place further down in like I think it's the, I I took a bunch of notes. I think it's the representation portion. Can you just explicitly state that again, commercial is different. And I think in some cases, buyers aren't necessarily represented in commercial and can be shown, like they can they can be like a prospective client or whatever and not really have a buyer's agent with an agreement. But in residential, it's been like the practice has been that you are supposed to have an agency agreement. So later on in the representation section, can we just have a statement to clarify it that says, residential real estate showings with the agent, the licensee showing the property needs to represent the seller or the buyer or both of the parties, which then like feeds back to that document, which we've been following for 20 years, that you should have an agency agreement. Because that way it's explicitly stated. And I think that's where I think part of it's like people are like, well, it doesn't actually say it in black and white that I have to have this, so I don't need to. But I do think that's the policy we want to follow.
Well, then this language that we have in here has to change. That's where this is a policy call where we're really looking to the commission. And you're right, we've heard from other folks, like, and I understand the commission tackled this topic back in 2000. That certainly predates me.
Right. That's a long time ago. I have no idea what and that's when buyer agency came about, like 4 years before that. So who knows what the environment was then.
1995, yeah.
Right, but since then, it's been the practice that people should be doing this. And frankly, if they don't do it, I mean, as a seller client, how do I know that anybody's even asked the question, have you been pre-qualified for a mortgage? How do I know that they're even like able to buy my property and, the actual intent and the ability is there. And so there's things like that need to happen, which again, then that person has gotten confidential information about the buyer. So they really should have an agency agreement with them. I know, I don't think we want to go into the situation where people can show houses without representation, because then like all professionalism is out the window, frankly.
I think she's absolutely right, because what's going to happen then is the fact is that this is going to lead to another house and whatever, because I think the next thing you know you're not going to have any type of agreements.
And frankly, I'll tell you what,
leading that way.
If I was the listing agent in this case and I knew somebody came into a listing that didn't have a buyer broker with somebody, I'd be like, can you please give me your buyer's name and contact information, because I need to check up, like I would like to follow up with them, because they don't have an agreement with them. So what prevents me from like aggressively pursuing someone else's potential client, right? So then it creates this other situation where you do have agents that are aggressive like that will try that too. And I feel like it's just going to completely lower the bar of professionalism, which isn't necessarily the purview of DCP. Like DCP is here to protect the consumer. They don't really care about like what real estate agents are doing, but you are protecting the consumer somewhat, if you're asking the right questions and making sure that another agent's not taking advantage of them.
Actually, I think you're protecting the consumer in a different way. If someone is doing showing, if I bring someone to look at a house or whatever, and I'm not representing them, they have no one in their corner. They really aren't being represented. I don't know what relationship, if any, I have with this buyer.
I think another way is, Peter, is also is over the years we've had a lot of complaints, and the biggest complaint is that yes, an agent goes out there and shows a house and gets a signed agreement immediately, and it gets that, and then all of a sudden he disappears, and he's got an agreement.
Sorry, Joe. Sorry, you're sharing your screen.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The chairman passed away.
Okay. So anyhow, we have, that's another problem is we have also is the fact is that the agent goes out there, gets a 1-day agreement for we think it's 1 day, it's for 6 months. Next thing we get a complaint at the DCP, okay, is that I've been tied up with this agent. I don't even know who he is or she is at a house. And now I can't go out and look at houses with other people.
So what you're saying is solving one problem can manufacture another. And you're right. When I was unsophisticated, before I was in real estate and I was buying a house, I had an ethical agent who said, let's just do a 7-day agreement, but I didn't know any better.
So what do we do here then? Because and part of this comes down to, frankly, agent education, that, you shouldn't be trying to lock people into 6-month contracts who you've just met at one property, right? Like, that's not really the right thing to do. But again, like, also protecting, I think, sellers from just letting any random person into their house at any random time, and not forming a relationship with a buyer, and frankly, potentially getting a ton of confidential information from a buyer that then if I see them again on a listing or something, that I could use because they haven't signed anything with me.
One thing is, we are addressing the confidential information in a different area, but yeah, all the other points definitely.
Right. But then the confidential information, frankly, becomes he said, she said, right? Like, I don't know. They didn't tell me that. I mean, you could act stupid. So.
Or is this too complicated to get involved with right now?
I mean, this has been the policy for 20 years. So I don't think it's like, I think what the problem is agents don't want to follow this because it's a difficult conversation for people to have, right? Like, and because what happens is you get all of these online leads in, and that's what's pushing this, is that all of these online leads come in from these consumer websites, and agents that buy these leads have to show houses. So, I mean, to be legal, they really should be signing buyer agency contracts with these folks before they let them in.
But I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Go ahead. What's your question?
How do I know with a potential buyer that I want to represent them? I mean,
so that's the question, Peter, right? So you as an agent that's a professional has a conversation with the buyer about the process, and then you tell them, in order for me to show this property to you, I need to have a buyer agency contract with you. Here, I'm going to email it to you so you can read through it and any questions. And frankly, we can make it for just this property for 2 days, a week, a month, whatever you're comfortable with. Not me, I'm going to sign you up for the whole state of Connecticut for 6 months, right? Like, so part of it is an educated agent educating the consumer, and agents just don't want to have that conversation because it's a difficult conversation to have because they're not professional. Like, that's the problem, really. And I have plenty of leads I have not followed up on or gotten because of the person doesn't want to sign paperwork. And my response is, that's completely understandable, but unfortunately I can't show you this property. And it is what it is. You'll find agents who are like, oh, never mind, we'll just go see it anyway. Or a consumer will say to you, well, 15 other agents have already showed me houses and I haven't had to sign anything, right? Like, that's the other thing. I met somebody a couple of years ago where the clients had seen with listing agents 15 properties, 0 listing agents besides me had provided them with the real estate agency disclosure form that said I represented the seller. 0 out of 15 showings. So no one knows the rules, and they don't follow the rules because it's difficult, not because they don't know it's the rule. It's because they don't want to do it.
It's also, I mean, there is something to be said where it is unclear in law. What is negotiate? If you are not going, so if you're just going online and you are setting up the appointment for that buyer to see the property, you're not talking to the selling agent. You're not asking questions of it. You're not asking about pricing, all of that stuff. You're just going in and seeing the property. You can see where someone can make a good faith argument that, well, negotiate is what triggers needing that sales agreement. I wasn't negotiating, therefore. And I understand we have the policy from 2000, but it hasn't been codified anywhere. And so I think that's one of the things we want to do here is figure out, if this is what we still want, then let's put it in law. And then let's blast it out and tell everyone, this is this is what we want to do, and this is what we are going to start enforcing.
So I'm clearly in favor of having paperwork signed. I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but probably we should get, a straw poll here of how people feel about it, because I'm not the only one, and Ben's not the only one, and Peter's not the only one.
But is this a separate conversation? I mean, is that a separate conversation for a separate time, or is now the time to do?
I think it just has to be decided because we have to go forward with the legislation we want for October 1 or whenever. So, I mean, we could have another meeting, obviously, between now and then, but like, this is a conversation we have to have for this legislative cycle, I think.
The way it is right now, it's just not going to be clear enough.
No, people will continue doing whatever they're doing.
We can, I mean, and that's wordsmithing. So we can certainly help improve this. What we sent out to you guys, we have no expectation of the final draft. And actually towards the end, I do want to go let you know some other areas where we were doing some technical fixes and also had some other things that we wanted to talk about for a potential next draft.
If we make
This is not done.
changes, will the agents have enough time? Will they be informed in time? Will they have enough opportunity to understand this?
So we put the effective date of this. So session starts in January, ends up wraps up the second week of June. In order to make sure that we had enough time to do an effective communication campaign and also to make it so our investigations and licensing division didn't kill me for proposing things in too short of a time frame, we put the effective date as April 1st, 2024.
Yeah.
So there's a long lead time to make these legal changes. We don't want, this is not a shock and awe campaign. We don't want to have a gotcha moment for anyone.
That's exactly my fear. I just want to know that everyone has adequate time, everyone will be adequately informed and educated. That's wonderful that they have enough lead time.
Okay. Actually, I can't see it. Carrie Jo, I can't. On my monitor, I don't have the, I must have lost it. There we go.
Chairman Castangoy, can I ask that just, there's been a number of commission members that have remained silent on this. I'd love to have a better understanding of whether the other commission members would like more time to discuss this, whether they agree that a agreement should be executed prior to initial showing, or whether they think that this policy should be reconsidered. Is there any way to poll the members that, if you're comfortable with that?
Sure. I think it's, as you can see, we were told not to discuss this among ourselves beforehand. And as you can see, we have questions.
Okay, so do you think it's prudent to have a separate meeting just on whether or not this is on the timing of when the agreement's required?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then let's decide for that.
I think, you know why it's important. It's been going on forever. And it is, and Amy's right. I mean, it is cumbersome to do this. It's uncomfortable to do it, but let's make sure that we do it and we actually do it in plain language that everybody's going to understand out there, and just do it properly and stand by it. Am I correct?
So just want to bear in mind, so for time frame, we have to have final language in before October 1st.
Mhm.
And we have Ryan and Ben who are spearheading the, and Paulette is going to be here as well. I may leave you guys prior to them, just because.
Is it September, by the way, Julianne?
Yeah, well, so technically my due date is September 30th. I'm gigantic. I don't think I'm making it to September 30th. But yeah, hypothetically, I will be with you until the end of September, but the team is, all up to speed. They've got this. But just so in terms of timing for the next meeting, we should do it quickly to make sure that we can work through this issue. And I believe, Cindy, but are you still, I can't tell, I can't see everyone right now, but I think Cindy is still on the call. Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you had done, or CTR had done a poll of members recently. Was this one of the issues that had gone out to your membership?
We do not have the results back yet, so we have not looked at that with our committee, but I agree you should do a separate meeting, Julianne, because the words that are in the statute reference a disclosure, not a buyer agreement. So I think there's multiple things to look at in the statute besides the word negotiate. And negotiate is not intended to, my understanding, the definition of negotiate is to explain what negotiation is. That wasn't supposed to be triggering something else, because negotiation is a process between a buyer and a seller, and that word is used for other purposes, other places. What we've requested is if we're doing something that's time, that reflects a time, say what the time is, say prior to showing, say at first contact, say as soon as you get meaningful information. I mean, saying first showing, I mean, I can tell you a concern that we've had is you could work with someone for 2 years before you do a showing. You don't think that's a little late to be, you know, having some kind of agreement with a consumer? So I do think there's a much larger discussion to have, as you've mentioned. But yes, we did do a survey, but we don't have all of it back yet. That was a
Okay.
longer answer than you wanted, but that's a longer answer.
No, that's very helpful. No, but it is good to know that you've asked the question so that input will be coming in as well for that. So, okay.
Yeah, and I can tell you there's many who think it should be at first contact or as soon as you start to get confidential information, not the first time a warm body goes to a showing. So there is a big discussion about, you know, what should happen related to the timing that needs to happen.
Well, it's something that's, that we gotta really have to meet about and discuss this among ourselves. Julianne, we'll try to get this done too. I know we're tight for time.
All right, well, I think that was the big, that was the big chunk of definitions in that area where we really changed things quite substantively. One thing that I do want to flag, you know, so definition, if you go scroll down to 23, was just real estate licensee. Since in many areas, it was just getting lengthy to say, you know, leasing agent, brokers, you'll see everything's basically been changed to real estate licensee. It was just a cleanup change, but it shows up so many times. I just wanted to flag that for you. That is, you know, it's a.
Should you add associate broker in there too, or no? Because that falls under real estate broker.
Exactly, okay. It falls under real estate broker. So, you know, real estate transaction, real property security dealer. So 25, 26, 27 are all just moving them up. We did not change those definitions. Same thing with 29, but 28 is a new definition. So 28 is related to when we talk about confidential information. That's what we're saying, you know, it's that person that emails you before you have a chance to do anything and says, you know, I make this much money, you can run a credit check on me, here's my social security number, and yeah, it's too late, you now have that information. So the residential real property, that is not one number that we just pulled out of thin air. That 1 to 4 family was what was in there previously.
I had a question about that. Do you need to include condominiums and co-ops in there, or does that fall under the 1 to 4 residential?
That seems to be a Fannie Freddie Mac definition years ago. 1 to 4 family considered.
So I don't know if, you know, does that assume condos and co-ops are under that umbrella?
I am not sure about that. Ben, do you have?
Yeah, so like Julian was saying, all of these, hold on, let me look at the screen so it looks like I'm looking at you. So yeah, so that's a definition that currently exists. And spare a thought for how difficult this was to understand before we moved all the definitions to one section. But your question as to whether that includes condos and co-ops, in some parts of the current statute, it does, in other parts. So long and short of it is, the way that the law currently exists without these changes, it does include those, right? So whether it's a condo or co-op or the ownership, it's just, I think that just refers to the number of people that it can fit, as opposed to, when you say condos and co-ops, it says residential real property, including condos and co-ops throughout. So we can look at incorporating that into the broader definition. But the way that it currently exists, it appears to include that.
But does
I
that
could
mean,
just
so it'd be
clarify. I'm sorry,
sorry.
go ahead, Julianne.
This came up some time ago, and I think because when they came up with this, under what it says residential real estate is condominium, is covered condominium co-ops.
Right. Just to, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
But I think that would be great to clear that up or add it.
Yeah, just to clarify the question, Commissioner Berquist, are you asking whether a condo or co-op building that has 4 or less units in it would be considered residential real property? Or if I say, or if a portion of a building was turned into a condo, for example, would that be considered resident? I'm just, if you could clarify the question a bit.
I want to make sure condos and co-ops fall under residential real property because, for example, like for taxing reasons, like property tax reasons, they typically are. So I just want to make sure that they're in this bucket. Whether that needs to be called out or not, I don't know. That's really what my question is.
Yeah,
Does it need to say means to 1 to 4 family residential, including condominiums and co-ops?
I see no negative consequence in adding that language, though I don't know any reason why they would be excluded from this definition as it's written.
Okay.
And it would be, yeah, but just to further clarify, so for example, I own a condo in an 8-unit complex in Hartford. And so that, even though I am the sole owner of one of those, it is, there are 8 units in the association. So I can't claim that it, like my one condo is a 1 family. That would be excluded because there are 8.
I'm not
Correct?
sure.
No, that's included. Like I would see that as included because a condominium is, even though you've bought into an ownership association,
Okay.
you're still
a single
deeded a
family.
you're deeded a single family property essentially.
Okay, so
just-
that needs further, okay, that needs further language.
And
Yeah,
you
just-
also have to include, I mean, if we're going to be careful about this, I saw in the past someone alluded to mobile homes, which is very confusing. A lot of lawyers who only do mobile homes because we're not sure in the state of Connecticut if it's real estate or if it's personal. Taxes both, depending on the issue.
So, I mean, mobile homes are included in the definition of engaging in the real estate business.
So then we're covered. Good.
Right. If I could just clarify the condominium conversation, co-ops would be a bit different, but condominiums ownership are almost in a typical situation. Let's say you have a building with 20 units in it. Typically, each owner will own their own unit, but it'd be a 8-unit building, and then their part of that ownership is they're going to own pieces of the common areas. Is it the intention of the commission then to include condominium buildings of all sizes and then co-op buildings of all sizes? So we're really just abolishing the 1 to 4 family residential, the 1 to 4 family aspect of that definition completely.
Or condos and
But
co-ops.
I think
But that would, there are no other than leased buildings.
yeah, it's just you wouldn't want apartment buildings included in this.
Right. So pretty much you're just carving out large leased buildings and all other real estate would be included the way that it's being described right now. So 150 unit building in downtown, Stamford would then be included in the definition.
If it's condoized with individual owners, it should be.
What are they? Are they apartments or are they 100?
Yeah. So if they, let's say it's a 150 unit condo or 150 unit co-op, and the co-op is going to be interesting because you're not actually owning any piece of the real estate, you're owning the share of the building. So that will further complicate the drafting. So it is, but the discussion right now is to remove 1 to 4 family unless it's an apartment building.
Well,
The 1 to 4 family has always been considered a unit that you would buy, not commercial. If you got over 4 units, it would be considered a commercial sale So when it says residential real property, meaning 1 to 4 family residential, they're talking about one unit, one building, one sale. I don't think
Or
it's
to me, I
collectively
wouldn't
talking
take out,
about a huge condominium project because people would buy one individual unit. They're all deeded separately.
Okay.
And FHA, you know, you can't buy over, isn't that correct, Ben, for a 4-unit, a 4-family?
That's my understanding, is that FHA loans are limited to 1 to 4.
I mean, I
and
think this
I don't know.
covers
Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is 1 to 4.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I
why
think this covers condos,
Yeah.
but you want to add it?
I don't think it would
My
hurt to
opinion.
add condominium to it.
why can't we add 1 to 4 family resident, including individually deeded condominiums or co-ops? Can we add that language in? Does that then cover us?
Well, again, as we discussed, I mean, the co-op is the one that's a tricky one a little bit. That you're owning, the ownership is done differently.
Corporation, yeah.
But at least condominium should be probably declare that. I mean, we always looked at it that when they said residential, it automatically included condominium. But let's be more specific. Agree, Amy?
Yeah, I'm just kind of doing a quick scan on site, but we'll
Nice.
also verify that within the existing language in the statutes that adding that in doesn't trigger any, ramifications in other areas, but yeah, so we'll work on language for that, figure out how to deal with the co-ops, and I certainly respect the mobile home impacts of all of this.
I think
It's tricky, so.
as you know, I'm on that committee also, mobile home. I think we gotta add that.
Yes, the idea that you're not selling the land,
Yeah.
yes, it does add a whole different layer, but we'll have some internal conversations about that, because that's going to be figuring out how we legally reference those. But that was a good flag. That wasn't on my radar in terms of mobile homes related to real property. So.
We have to be careful with mobile homes because also depending, not everyone can sell every type of mobile home. When I take that back, I'm thinking of another technicality.
Yeah. Okay. I see we have a definition of responsible broker. Okay, where we are now, 32? Sale is there.
Yes, we did not change that.
Okay. 33, school means license, continue education, approved pursuant to this chapter. Any changes there or anything?
So that is new language. Sorry, Julie.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so that is new language, and it just kind of clarifies licensing for schools that offer continuing education, free licensing courses. And so we borrowed the definition from there.
Is a school a person or an entity?
So a person means that by law, so a person is either a business entity or an individual. So we're capturing both using that. So you'll see where we mean a human, we'll use individual, and where we mean a business, we use business entity. So a subdivision, we didn't change. Team, these were clarifying definition or clarifying changes that were asked for by the industry. So we added in designated brokers because the problem is we had licensed brokers, but the individual associated with the business oftentimes they didn't actually hold their own license because they were tied to the brokerage entity, but they had all the qualifications. Like they they could be a broker by simply activating that second credential. But legally, they couldn't be part of the team because they were a designated broker without their own license. And then just change sponsoring real estate broker to responsible broker, since that's the term we're using throughout. But Jill?
With regard to the team, the designated broker, I believe it's if sponsoring or a designated broker wants to be part of a team, they have to activate their individual license.
Currently, this would make it so they didn't have to. So they wouldn't have to have that second license if we add them in here. So they wouldn't have to pay the fee for the business and the fee for them as an individual, just to be a member of the team.
So the designated broker of the entity can be part of a team within that entity.
If this change goes through, without having to activate their separate credential, yes.
Okay.
So Commissioner Berquist?
Just a clerical, there are duties of commission, and this is throughout the document. I think commission is supposed to have a capital C.
So the way the LCO does it, that you define your term once, and then subsequently they don't want you to capitalize your defined term.
That's fine.
It drives me nuts. I would rather know that it's a defined term by having it be capitalized, but I've lost that war.
Thanks.
So. Hi. So duties of the commission in section 2 was just changing technical, so changing the reference to real estate licensees. There's no substantive change in section 2. In section 3, this also is just changing around defined terms. Let me just make sure, except, yeah, this is really just reformatting things. And the liability section down on page 10, which you'll see there's a note in there, we just moved it to another section where it talks about the liability of the broker and the business entity. You're still liable for the actions of your agents and employees. And then handling of licensing is down in licensing section, so it's in 316. We clarified, though, that you have to provide to us on the form in a manner. I'm in the bottom of page 11. Right, myself? Yeah, it's on 11. For when a business entity is applying, they have to give us the identity and contact information of the designated broker, the form prescribed by the commissioner. And clarifying here in D on the top of page 12, that you can have a fine of no more than $1,000 per violation. So this is something that's consistent throughout statutes that we've been changing, whether it's like food, liquor, drugs. It's saying that it's not just $1,000, and it's $1,000 per violation, because honestly, $1,000 to a lot of businesses is the cost of doing business.
Weren't we discussing that? I think Morag was one for years, wanted to increase that.
So that was in another section we flagged it for licensees. This is cost of doing business. This is the fine associated with people who are unlicensed.
Mm-hmm.
So this also could certainly go up. We defer to the commission on that.
We've been sitting at $1,000 for a long time. Anybody want to increase that amount? My suggestion, at least double at 2,000.
I'd love for it to have some teeth in it, and I've heard the arguments against it, that it becomes uncollectible, but it'd be nice if we had that ability. Doesn't mean we have to do the maximum. It would be
How
nice.
often are the fines?
You froze, but I think you said how often are the fines collected? So it largely depends. So if it's on an individual or a business entity. If it's an individual, then there is a collections process that ultimately, if the fine remains unpaid for a certain period of time, the DRS will actually garnish tax returns to the individual in the event that they are supposed to receive a tax return. So you'll get your money that way. Alternately, if it is a business entity, then we aren't able to go after the tax returns that way. However, we have been working with the Attorney General's office more closely now on certain cases where they have offered to do a bit more collections work for us. Specifically, one of the things, we're working with them right now on the Agnelli real estate case, where there was a final decision issued. You have all seen the signs up. So we are working on that with them to add some teeth on the back end. But also what we can do is, have an injunction on the business, even if, in that case, they were ordered to shut down. But let's say you did not order a suspension or a revocation of the business's credential. You just said, you owe us $10,000, and they said pound sand. We can go to the Attorney General's office and say, all right, well, we now want to make it so they can no longer operate until the payment's done. So there are teeth to it. We are pursuing it more aggressively now. I think that if it is a lower fine, like if you impose a fine of $1,000 on a company, we're generally not going to the Attorney General's office to go bring it to court. It's just not worth their time, unfortunately.
What about just a license suspension until they pay it?
That is one of the things that that's one of the things that we've also been doing more so in recent years, of saying your license is suspended until you pay it. If you don't pay it in X amount of time, then your credentials are revoked.
$1,000 also is not a big deal.
And it's been $1,000
in this day and age.
And I agree with raising it then, yeah.
If I could just jump in, just because this is pretty standard across a lot of different industries and even outside of DCP, the $1,000 is not like one case $1,000. So if we find someone that showed 10 houses, that's 10 violations, that's $10,000 of potential exposure. So for the really egregious actors, from an enforcement side, if I was prosecuting a case, we'd have more than enough tools to sanction bad activity with this level. That said, obviously this is a decision for the commission, but I just want the context of this is egregious violations usually will have multiple violations per case.
Are you seeing different numbers in other commissions?
So one thing I will say that we are doing this year is we are revising fines for some other areas. So I realize, like, completely unrelated to you, but in the world of some food manufacturing establishments and bakeries, we are proposing legislation to increase the fines there to $5,000 per violation for unlicensed entities. And we're also looking at doing this for businesses that fail to register an occupational apprentice, so like plumbers, electricians, HVAC entities, if they, because unfortunately we find that they will actually employ these apprentices, and then the apprentices find out, after working for them for 2 years, that the paperwork was not properly filled out. They have to do their apprenticeship over. So, so those are two areas we're proposing $5,000 per violation.
I mean, the other question, I wonder how long it's been $1,000. I'll bet it's been more than 10 years. You know, I mean, I wonder if 2,000 is enough. 5,000 seems steep to me, but 2,500 doesn't seem crazy. I mean, I don't know what other boards are doing.
Most other, it varies. A lot of other boards have $1,000, but a lot of it is we haven't done a comprehensive overhaul of their statutes in many years. Like this is a big process we're undertaking right now. So like this is the time to make it what you want this to be. So
I agree with Peter. I think 2,500 is reasonable.
But it's not a definitive amount. You're not saying it's going to be $5,000. You're saying not more than. So I tend to think 5,000 is a great number. You know, so Peter, just because it's higher, it's not more than. So I think it just gives a little more leeway for those really bad offenders.
Oh, so it's a cap.
Correct.
Correct.
It does give us that flexibility.
I'm going to excuse myself for one moment. My suggestion though on this is 2,000, but whatever. My feeling strongly that it should be increased. I'll be right back.
If it's a cap, I would go with the 5. That gives them flexibility anywhere between 1, 2, 3, and up to 5. It doesn't say it will be 5.
But 5 is a big number. I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't know. 5 is a big number.
It is, but it's a cap. It doesn't mean it will be 5. It means up to 5. So it gives the flexibility. It could go back to 1,000 depending on the circumstances.
I will say it is very rare that I find decisions that hit the cap. I think that it is, it is certainly there's an ability to drop the hammer, but it usually we're not finding decisions where the hearing officer or the board is throwing the book to the maximum extent of their authority at a respondent. But again, you could. It's.
Well, it also acts as a deterrent, doesn't it? I mean, if someone is operating and they know there's the potential of that type of penalty, maybe make them think a little more.
Hard to argue with you, Morag.
Go ahead, I don't mind.
Do you want it for the meantime? It sounds like maybe split the baby at either 2,500 or 3,000 and then kind of mull it over.
I'm sorry, what's ours? I missed that. Where are we at? 2,500 or 3,000?
Yeah, it sounds like some people are saying, so 2,000, some people are saying 5. I don't know if maybe.
But if you ask us, I don't know that, I'm comfortable with whatever everyone else wants to do. So.
Well, I'm comfortable at 2,000. Anybody else? Amy?
I agree. I don't really care what the cap is because it's an up to situation. So.
Yeah. Linda?
And it's per violation.
Linda?
Ben, I'm with the 5,000. So that's.
You're for 5,000?
Yeah, it's a cap. So.
Okay, Peter, what are you suggesting?
I like my 2,500. Morag said she likes 5,000, but if everyone else likes 5,000, I'm not opposed to it. I mean, but what Sharon and Morag both said it's a cap. And right.
Ben, I go with Morag at 5,000 as long as it's a cap.
All right, it looks like 5,000. All right, so let's end it and let's move on to the 5,000, okay? Julianne?
Okay, we'll change it.
Okay.
We've been talking about this for years. Hooray.
I knew that'd make you happy. I knew that'd make you happy.
Ben,
Yes,
can I go back for a minute on the duties of the commission? In there, it talks about electing officers or whatever, which we don't have other than the chair. It doesn't say anything, it says anybody, other than the chair. It doesn't say who elects the chair. Obviously, it's the consumer, the commissioner who elects the chair. But why don't
Oh,
we
it's
say
been
that?
the governor. It's been the governor who appointed the
The
chair.
governor? Okay.
Yep, Jody was the last one to do that.
Yes,
So
the
that's not the
commissioner,
idea.
I'm sorry, the commissioner does not have oversight over the board chair,
Okay.
or in terms of appointing the board chair.
Yeah. So should we say that? The governor appoints it? The chair?
I don't think we have that section in here.
So our documents that we shared only reflects the things that we changed.
Yeah, because we didn't have any changes to that section, so
Yeah.
I think I'd have to go back and look, but I think it's in there of how the appointment works.
I think you have to go back to Jody Rell's governorship, because she did appoint the chairman of the commission at that time. And once we lost that chairman, we've been sort of unofficially selecting our acting chair. The governor has not come through with his appointment, either governor. I mean, we've survived very nicely, but I do think it falls on the governor. But yeah, check it out.
That's the commission will select officers other than a chairperson.
Right.
Is that the area that has been highlighted on the screen share? Is that what you're looking for?
You do have it in there.
Director Avalon?
Yes. I
Okay,
didn't-
thank you.
I was
Yeah.
actually, I'm looking in the general statutes, but yeah.
No, I was following along. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I was looking at a different page. Okay. So, I mean,
I don't think there's a problem with the way it's written. I think there just hasn't been a follow through for many years.
we'd have to
I
clear
don't
this
know
with the
that we're
governor's.
asking to change it.
Yeah, we'd have to clear that with the governor's office. Anytime we're going to say that they shall do something, definitely, many levels above my pay grade. But also it's going to be, I just want to make it clear that we're not changing the way things are constructed currently. But
If it says who appoints the chair somewhere else, fine. I just think it raises a question about who appoints the chair. It says,
so if the
everybody
chairperson
is appointed this
is
way,
covered,
but
if the chairperson is covered and he's not, the acting chairperson, which is I am, is not covered. Because I wasn't appointed by the governor for that position. Am I correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I guess what I'm saying is that acting chairman, which I wasn't appointed by the governor, then therefore I'm not covered.
we can, we'll certainly, you can flag that.
There were really two things here. One is, I think it, you know, if it just asks the question of who appoints the chair. And
Right.
I think it should be answered somewhere in there. And the second thing is, which is not part of this at all, which is when we, as been pointed out, the last couple of chairs have been acting, and I think it's too bad that they're not the chairs.
Well, it's been about 20 years, I know.
They've both done a very good job, so I think they should be chair.
And it with an increase in salary, right?
Double.
Yeah.
All right.
Add mine to that too while we're at it.
So let's see if we can then, so I have that flagged. I think we are down to the team section. So that's going to be starting on page 12, going into 13. These are mainly technical changes until you get to F. So one of the things that has come up a number of times is this issue of how a team can transfer from one broker to another. And, you know, do they have to pay for the full new team name? How does it handle? Because you can transfer information, or you can change your information by paying a $25 fee. To pay for a new credential is, oh, now I have to look it back up, 565.
500 something, yeah.
Yeah, so 565. So it's a huge difference in terms of cost. So we're saying that you can transfer, if everyone on your team is transferring from William Ravis to Coldwell Banker, go with God. You can do this. You have a $25 fee. You're just changing the responsible broker. If, you know, it's me, Ben, and Ryan on a team, and Ben doesn't want to come with us, then Ryan and I will have to either first remove Ben from our team at William Ravis, and then Ryan and I are going to be the only ones there. And so then we can do a subsequent transfer over to Coldwell Banker. But if Ben wants to still use the team name and he doesn't agree to stepping off the team, then Ryan and I have to go create a new team over at Coldwell.
Why not 565 either way? New team either way.
Yeah.
You can certainly do this. We were trying to be more business friendly for the
I think
agents.
I think the team people are already screaming about the fee they have to pay. So I think this like is kind of an out for them. I think that's a nice thing that you probably should do. And frankly, I don't know how many times when teams transfer, the whole team goes with them, because I know of a big team that just moved to a different broker and like one of their persons is left behind. So it may not, then they may have to pay the fee anyway. So
I think we're going to see a lot of messes from these teams. I think they're expensive to the state. I would love to see them cover some of the costs.
I mean, the only thing is that licensing fees don't come to us anyway. So they go to the general fund, which like helps the state as a whole. It will fix your roads and pay for your community colleges, but it won't get funneled back into the universe of teams or DCP regulation.
This also isn't a new concept. The transfer in and of itself was part of the original statute. This is just clarifying the process.
And so one of the other things that we added in here, and unrelated to teams, but is this idea of how, oh wait. Nope, it's not in, hold on. This is one of the things that we wanted to talk about at the end. I realize I'm looking at a slightly different draft. If we actually can keep about 15 minutes at the end, I do want to talk about some additional changes we have proposed. So But let's go through this draft and get as far as we can today. All right, so let's go down to section 4.
You just mentioned the word draft. I think that should be displayed on this document so that it's clearly defined as preliminary.
That's fine, we can absolutely, the next draft you see, we'll make sure that there's a watermark on it. Let's see. So section 4 was just technical, just adding leasing agents in there in terms of liability for affiliated entities with brokers. Then in section 5, it also is just technical changes related to using definitions. Section 6 is substantive. Section 6 is where we talk about associate brokers, who they are, and what they can do. So basically, your responsible broker is liable for you. You work for them, you're functionally working as a salesperson. You know, we wanted to make sure that it's also clear though in C that if you want to break that relationship and, you know, Brian and I don't want to work together anymore, then we can both part ways and we both remain brokers and it's no harm, no foul.
Should there be something that says, you know, if an associate broker wants to become a responsible broker at any point, if they no longer affiliate with a responsible broker, they can do so with no additional training or licensure needed? Like, does that need to be clarified or no? Because I've essentially then just dropped my associate broker and I become a licensed broker, which means I can do whatever I want.
You're already licensed as a broker. You don't need anything. You're already a full broker.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, because you still have to, even though
I have to tell DCP I'm not associated with this other broker anymore.
But so, I mean, you're choosing to limit the amount of
liability,
of the type of things you can do in terms of advertising and ask for stuff like that. However, also, the one thing that you don't get out of is that since you can become a responsible broker at any point in time, you can, again, choose to part ways with your responsible broker, you still have to do CE and renew your license the same way that you are a broker. So this is what makes it so that you can walk away and at any time. So
yeah, this is all fine.
Okay. So then, so section 7, we just, in sub B, we just put it on a form and just limited it in terms of the application. It's just on a form and manner prescribed by the department, which is usually what it is. I mean, because it's the subjectivity related to, the information the commission deems desirable related to honesty, truthfulness, integrity is the kind of stuff that typically will get us in trouble. There is a, there's kind of a standardization of application forms. Obviously, the pharmacist one is going to be different than the real estate broker, but simplifying this section related to what's on the application. But Commissioner Berquist?
I vote for this section that supervising licensed real estate broker should probably become responsible broker in several places. I think that phrase, like I put it in quotes, so I think that phrase was used in a number of places, supervising licensed real estate broker. So probably should just go to the definition of responsible broker. I had it for this, like I noted this section.
It could be both. I mean, it could be, if it doesn't have, I mean, it could be, I can see where.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It could be the same.
Oh, that is down in.
Is that a definition though? It isn't.
No, I think you're right that that was an oversight.
So I just think it just needs to change the definition name rather, so it's just not confusing, that's all.
Yep, good flag. Okay, that is something we'll catch. All right.
I see, or, let me just catch something here, or authorized something then. What are we getting into now? Okay, supervisor, or authorized representative. What are we talking about? Should we have that at all, authorized representative? Now we're bringing another party in.
Carrie Jo, I'm not sure where you are. If you wanna
13.5.
get back.
Or author.
Yeah, I think where Ben was,
Is it back?
Commissioner, the chairman was talking about was on page 18, at the end of 18. Yep.
Yeah, or, that's right, or authorized representative.
So this is existing language. So
Right. So,
This is-
or authorized representative. So that's another person. Different party. That's how I'm looking at it. Shouldn't we just drop that?
so it should, yeah, it should be the responsible broker. Should be certifying to the applicants, like to the salesperson or to the whomever that licensee is underneath them. But let us take another look at this section, because obviously we have to just make sure that this was.
Let's not bring another party in. If it's not necessary, we don't need them.
You know, Ben, that supervising broker is a term that licensing uses. When we
Right.
look up a licensee, there's a tab, it says supervising broker. We click that on and it gives us the broker. So I think that's where that comes from.
That's what we're changing to responsible broker. So that's why that supervising broker will cease to exist. So. Okay, we'll take another look at that section. You'll definitely will make changes as appropriate there.
Mhm.
So, then the next substantive change, you want to go down to 4, there you go. So related to 4, this is for a leasing agent. In order to get licensed, we wanted to say that you have to have certain training, specifically in leasing activity. So fair housing, landlord and tenant law, security deposit management, stuff like that. We put in 30 hours of classroom study. This is another one of those things where, Commissioner Gray asked us how we came up with the 30, or how we came up with the 50 units before. We thought this also seemed like a reasonable number, but are very open to change. This is, it's a 40-hour class for doing the entirety of the universe. And most of the other things we're kind of cutting, like, so for continuing education, I believe we cut it in half to 6 hours versus 12, just because it's such a more limited scope of work that they're going to be doing. Maybe, I don't know if there are options for 30 hours of classroom study in these more limited subject matter areas. But this is something where we definitely want your input, because 30 was a placeholder, not necessarily knowing as the commission what you felt would be appropriate for initial licensure.
Who's going to come up with this, the contents of this? Is this going to be UConn? This course?
Well, no, this isn't UConn coming up with any classes. This is the industry. So this is going to be people, those entities that offer courses. There's going to be a market now for classes in landlord tenant law. There are certainly courses out there in general on this already. But fair housing, it might be the Connecticut Fair Housing Center. We say, we're going to be requiring these courses now. can you please come up with a course, to help provide this knowledge to folks that are doing just leasing. So we are not, DCP certainly does not prescribe courses. We do not help develop courses. This is not our role to be serving as a real estate school. So, but we can certainly encourage the market, say, there's a demand here. It's something that we're going to be requiring of our licensees. Can you help us by offering, someone step up, offer these services, please, to the folks that need them.
It looks to me, based on what I'm saying, it looks like it's 20 hours. I mean, it looks to me like they're going to need to take some 3-hour courses. I don't know. What do you guys think? Does that look like 30 hours to you?
No, I was thinking more like 20 as well.
Yeah, I'm just concerned if
they
it's
developed. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's 30 hours, we're going to have a bunch of people coming to the commission that are like, I don't want to take these classes, but instead I have these college classes I took or whatever to try to substitute. So will people just be trying to do a workaround because they don't want to do 30 hours?
No, I think it should have to be 20, right? But they would have to take it because it does involve fair housing and which they should be very well in tune to and leasing. So 20 hours, I would think would be enough for those, but that.
And that's, a third of the hours for a real estate license. So
I agree.
Okay.
I'm fine with 20 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
So, but just to clarify, because it says courses approved by the commission or commissioner, that just means, school ABC submits a class to Jill and Jill approves it like she does now. So that process remains the same. Okay. Yeah. And it's rental related, so they can take it. Okay.
And they're going to be offered, it's not just for leasing agents. So brokers, salespersons.
Correct, yes.
So do all the same classes.
It would be neat, and I don't know that this is possible, but it'd be really neat if a leasing agent could take the add-on to, so they wouldn't need to take the whole thing. Some of these classes could apply towards becoming a salesperson.
Yeah, I mean, they still have to take the PMP, but yes, they can certainly say, oh, I dipped my toe in the water doing this work, but.
So this cannot be also part of the PMP. So for example, fair housing, I mean, boy, that's an important one. If it's exactly the same class.
Let's keep leasing as leasing and sale. I mean, I think let's not try to commingle the stuff. We're going to more complications that occur.
Yeah, I mean, if let's say the PMP, of course, within that 40 hours, 10 hours was on leasing, technically they could do the whole 40 hours and then just count the 10. It doesn't really seem to make that much sense, but I guess people can make their own decision for that. But yes, so, okay, well then we'll change that to 20. Yeah, our concern was also similar that they might just start taking random classes on adverse possession and, handling escrow accounts just because they needed to fill the time for the 30 and they were never going to deal with either of those issues. So let's see. Oh, I scrolled up. So let me go back down. So actually it's 10:44. I know I was hoping to spend the last 15 minutes on some new things that we brought up. So we do have a new draft that we're going to share with you guys after we've taken the input from today that we received. We'll get you a new draft. There were some new concepts that we put in there that I wanted to just talk through. So no surprises when things come out. So really there were 3 substantive changes in there. One was that we're allowing, and this was based on feedback from the industry, that we've heard that people want to be able to, let's say, I'm a broker or I'm a salesperson. I want to be able to put it not in Julianne Avalon's individual account when I'm receiving my commission. I want to be able to put it in this business that I solely own. It's Julianne Avalon Real Estate LLC. That's just where I put my commissions in. For tax purposes, I'm the only member. We wrote in that as long as I'm the sole owner of the business, for compensation purposes, it gets to the same place. There's still, the same type of integrity. how you decide to report your taxes is, you guys, it's up to you. So put in that provision. One of the other things was allowing for referral fees to go to out-of-state licensees, real estate licensees. This is something that we've been informed is happening already, generally. So seeing that there's not real concern that this is going to be codifying something that and impacts the integrity of the industry.
But we have to be careful how we define a licensee. So for example, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts defines a licensee differently. A person can have an inactive license and they are still eligible for referrals only. Inactive license.
I believe, and Ben and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we had put in that it needed to be an active licensee.
Right,
But-
so that's something that currently exists in the statute, and our current draft keeps that provision in. So they do need to be licensed in another state.
So it would need to be active in Massachusetts. This also doesn't address the idea that I pick on Arizona only because I know kind of with their occupational licenses, they require almost no licenses or credentials. I don't know how it applies to real estate in Arizona, but if Arizona doesn't require a real estate credential, then referral fees couldn't be paid to a real estate professional in Arizona because there's no credential oversight in that state. We don't know, there's no way to tell whether it's Susie Joe, who's a real estate agent, or just Susie Joe, who decided to help her brother sell a property in Connecticut. So that is, we tried to make it so that at least the money is staying in the real estate industry. So you can kind of track it. And if there is an issue, if there's an allegation of collusion, we can refer someone to a real estate board in another state and say, look, here's what we found. Here are the charges that we're bringing. You should know. And then one of the other areas that we changed is that for, wait, I don't see which section. So this is for, and actually, Ben, can you look up where the change was related to how we're doing jurisdiction? We had originally said that for upon application into the department that you had to consent to have your jurisdiction of the case be in New Britain Superior Court rather than, and actually I think, yes, right there, Terry Jo, the third one down. No, maybe it's not that one.
It's section 12, 20-317 sub B.
So can you go to 20-317? You can just search that. Or you can just scroll up, yes, as well. I think it'd be helpful to see it. Okay, but so basically it talks about when someone's bringing a suit on related to a real estate. Got it? And then, okay, if you scroll down to B. There we go. So for applicants licensed in another state, we're saying those suits can only be brought against that applicant in New Britain Superior Court. That was originally, we were thinking because of that's where administrative appeals go. Realistically, we don't have this language in other areas. If there may be a better area of jurisdiction, if all of the business conducted and the activity happened in, down in Stamford, there may be, a court in Southern Connecticut that is a more appropriate place to have a case be heard. So we're just planning on taking out all of section B, and then it'll allow for suits to better be handled in the appropriate jurisdiction. And I believe those were the substantive changes. That was the entirety of it. Ben or Ryan, did you have anything to add to that?
Just a note, it piggybacks on the foreign real estate licensees, the out-of-state licensees. We made a small change to the ability for those individuals to file suit. Right now, there's a prohibition on anyone filing any suit for compensation related to real estate transactions unless you're a licensee. We expanded that simply to allow them to have access to the courts if there's a pre-existing referral fee arrangement, that they would be able to recover that if the local broker doesn't make good on that contract.
And I had one comment. This isn't about statutory change, but Commissioner Gray is Commissioner. Do I call you Commissioner Gray or Peter?
Peter's perfect, please.
Okay, got you. I noticed that my bosses on the call are calling everyone Commissioner. So
We generally do commissioners. I unfortunately sometimes fall off script with Amy only because I've known her before, but that is my mistake.
Okay.
I apologize.
So at any rate, Peter had asked a question earlier about non-material disclosures of information, and his understanding does appear to be consistent with the current statute. So the current statute 20-329CC, if the purchaser or lessee requests information that falls under that definition, the broker needs to go to their client, say, hey, they're asking for this information. And if they refuse to disclose that information, the broker is obligated under the law to tell the purchaser they're not disclosing that information.
That covers it. Yeah.
And again, that's not a change we're proposing. That's just currently existing there. We pulled all the definitions into a single place.
But it makes sense. I mean, if it became a material fact, the answer is we're not disclosing that, and then they can decide they're going to buy it or not, but they're not going to get information to what just became a material fact. It makes sense.
And so there's one other thing that we have not drafted yet because we need your help. So one thing that has come up is this issue of, and this was prompted by a real case, where there was a broker who was the designated broker for an entity solely owned. The entity was solely owned by this individual. There was another broker that was working for him, but was, again, acting more as a salesperson, wasn't involved in the day-to-day operations, wasn't really familiar with how things were handled, never dealt with escrow accounts, stuff like that. Unfortunately, the designated broker and owner passed away, and rather suddenly. And this broker that worked for him was like, I don't want to take over. And the person's family were not brokers. So there was no one to step into their shoes, but there were, you had clients that needed to be dealt with. You had money in escrow accounts. There was business that needed to be wrapped up. Like, what do we do?
Doesn't that simply escheat to the state?
If you have pending, ultimately, if it's unclaimed property, but there are claims on this property, do you really want to send them through probate, hold up deals that are pending? There seemed like there should be this temporary measure to be able to say, okay, you could have someone step in for this period of time, you have to figure out what's going on. But also in this case, who has authorization to be able to designate that designated broker when the business itself hasn't necessarily transferred ownership, hasn't gone through probate? Like there were a lot of issues that, although could be wrapped up, are time consuming to do. If you have clients that are like, well, but I want to, you all know, like I want to get my transaction done now. They don't want to wait for probate court and all of the filings. So we looked at some other states and have some language related to when someone passes away. But the question is then, like, how long does it run for? Like, who has the authority to appoint that person? Is it just death? What if it's, they get in a terrible car accident, they have some disability that maybe they will recover, maybe they won't. Like, there are all of these other factors. Once we started poking the bear, there are all of these, these issues that stemmed from that. So I'm hoping that maybe a couple commission members can talk to us about if you've seen this happen, what you think might be appropriate, if we can maybe sidebar before the next time we meet as the full commission. We'd really like some industry insight as to how to tackle this.
I've had this has come up maybe twice in 23 years. That just has occurred. I don't know if you remember, there was one case, I know the couple that came from. We find that this happens to a very, very small companies, not necessarily large corporations or companies, but it happens to a small mom and pop operation. And the other problem occurs is that who signs the check and the power of attorney on, and can they sell the company? So there are other things that it's not so easy. I mean, it's great to give them 120 days and just get it straightened out. But, who's going to sign the checks for you? Who's going to operate? The agent wants his commission, for example. Well, the person who signs the check has passed away. So there's a lot more to it. And we're opening up a lot of things.
So in Massachusetts, I believe it's only in the case of death, and I believe that a family member can step in for, I believe it's a year. But the question that I have is, what if no one wants to step in?
Right.
Well, that is a different issue. Like, that is certainly, if they can't get anyone to step in, and let's say, there is no money for the business, you can't compensate a broker for a shorter period of time, like, then you wind up having different issues. But
I don't think you'd ever want somebody though who is unlicensed to come in, like a family member who's unlicensed to come in and step in and act as a broker because they're managing escrow. So you would think it probably, like, existing pending business should be shifted to another brokerage, and that brokerage would just be like an executor essentially for those transactions until they're done.
Well, I don't think shifted, maybe allowing them to get a broker to step in for 120 days.
Like they cancel the transaction or something.
That's correct.
Transactions are
But
canceled.
you'll also find the fact is that, as Peter was saying, these people that don't have, they probably have no transactions either. You follow me? So,
But frankly, if I have a contract with a broker who's passed away, is my contract still valid?
even if it's not, even if you can invalidate the contract, that doesn't automatically get you your money back. Who can pay you back, and what happens in negotiated agreements? Like, it's so unfortunately my team, well, my team and I do have to run. We have an 11 o'clock. However, but can I have maybe 2 people that might be willing to talk to me on the sidebar? So Chairman Castaway, great. And
anybody else?
All right, thank you. Right, that'd be great. If we can, we'll probably just set something up to talk through this more, and we can go through all the issues, because we want to make sure we get this right before we even propose language out there.
Did we want to get together also a time or whatever, or maybe I could talk to Terry Joe for discussing the negotiation part? Remember?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we will.
So I'll set something up with Terry Joe to contact and send a day as soon as possible.
All right, wonderful. We really appreciate your time, and we'll do another one also just to get through hopefully the rest of this document. But we'll be in touch soon.
I thank all of you for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks, everybody.